Surviving the West. Part 3, 1 of 2. Let's get straight into that. If I don't miss my guess, you're all the type to scrounge every spooky story and morbid moment you can find. You've heard it all from the classics so often repeated that they are blurred into your mind, to those obscure tales found on dying parts of the internet that only a handful of people have ever read. But I wager that you've never heard of a horde. The type I mean, at any rate. You see, if you're hearing or reading a story with any trace of truth, you're reading something that was at some point passed down by someone who survived. A horde that doesn't leave survivors. And one entity can screw with untold people in the right situation. An infestation can leave a town physically scarred, cursed place for generations to come. A horde is the type of event that erases a place from history. Why? Once you get so many types of the wrong in one place, the rules they are bending start to overlap and cover for each other's failings. A leader always emerges, some paragon of evil that takes a few hundred powerful fingers reaching from the dirt and turns them into a massive hand that chokes the life out of anything it can reach. The mindless led by the scheming, the insane corralled by the manipulative, those made of flesh and bone enforced by dark magic, and those that are nothing but ethereal mists spared the attentions of those that would look to send them back to where they came from. They always fall into infighting, attrition, or accident, dispersing before setting in motion events that could alter the world. But to be staring down the barrel of that weapon when it's in full repair, well, my only advice to you is make your peace with your God, or accept that there isn't one, because all of the piss and vinegar in the world isn't going to let you hold back the dark tide. Yeah, I know, that wasn't advice so much as a warning, but by now you should realize there isn't always a silver bullet, and if there isn't always someone who knows how to shoot. So, what are you thinking we do? Kurt says. He sits across from me, early afternoon light pouring in from the windows of the jail. I laugh, a joyless sound that could just as easily turn into a frustrated sob. I have no clue, Kurt. I felt 2 steps behind since I got involved in this, and for the life of me, I don't understand why. If I had more information, I could at least take a guess, but all I know at this point in time is this guy called in some serious backup. The reason is what is important, though. If Lem is in control of the horde, we should just move it on down the road. If it's aimed at us and intent on doing us harm, well, that's a losing fight. And even if we lose 3 in 10 tracking through the mountains, that's better than 10 of 10 dying hard in the street. But if he's just calling in a favor, well, that changes things. Then it might just be a matter of making things more trouble than they are worth. In that case, we have 3 main options. I ramble, and I know it. I haven't slept. I'm still likely a bit drunk and don't quite remember when I last had a proper meal. Maybe this is the kind of situation that requires more than just one man's thoughts. Well, let's say there's no saying all the way around our necks yet. What are those 3 options? Kurt sounds calm and collected. Going solely by his tone, he could probably take care of the situation himself, with a hunting knife and a lantern, for when it gets dark. But we've already discussed how much effect spunk, moxie, or grit has when the shit really hits the fan. The easiest option would be for me to take a couple of days and try my luck with getting in touch with some things that have some pull in the circle Lem runs in. I say glossing over the fact that, for all intents and purposes, I'm talking about pacts that will have effects that last generations. And Kurt cuts me off. That sounds a whole hell of a lot like some devil-worshipping, deal at the crossroads bullshit, Andy. I never thought of myself as a saint, but that just seems like trying to put out a cook fire with a stick of dynamite. Well, fair enough, I say, glad to have someone willing to scrutinize my plans. Well, the second option is to go find us any kind of doodad totem, bless gun, curse knife, and dig in. I don't think I have trouble finding some stuff to suit our purposes, but if all I can find are a few handfuls of guns and knives, it can actually make these things bleed in any way, that matters. I still don't really like our chances in an open fight. Kurt is following me every step of the way, his unreadable face not questioning the absurdity of the situation, just the practicality of my solutions. And that one seems a little less likely to us on the almighty shit list. But let's see what else you got, Kurt says. A third option. Well, essentially, it'd be me trying to pick quantity against quality. I'd find as many of the most twisted folks you can direct me towards, and with any luck a few of those will be a little less than people. Folks, or preferably families, touched by shit that can't be understood. They might have some mojo of their own, or they might be on good terms with something that does. The regular sickos offer them clemency if they survive the fight. And for what it's worth, where I was trained, this is the standard operating procedure when you find yourself screwed and far from home. As I say this, I see a rare bit of emotion on Kurt's face. He is mulling over this option. I suppose if they do come on us in force, one less gun isn't going to save or damn us. But how do you plan on fighting these people? They're so sure out there, Kurt says. I shrug. I was hoping you'd have some kind of idea. You seem to know your way around this part of the world. I don't like the hint of begging in my voice. And Kurt laughs and shakes his head. Ha ha ha, I know these hills pretty well, but I don't know much beyond them. I've heard a tale or two, but no one bought a cigar with a tale. That being said, I think I know someone who has some aid they could render. You heard of the Up boys? My heart skips. Well, it's no sure thing, but if I were to start looking for people who might be able to help us, a world-renowned gunfighter wouldn't be the worst place to start. You know Wyatt Earp? I say, trying to keep skepticism from my voice. I never met the man. I was talking about James, Kurt replies. James? Who the hell was James Earp? My tone is harsher than I intended. A good friend of mine, though I'd like to be informed as to why that seems to have tied you Johnson in a knot. Man's a bartender, known around the damn world, and as such, that puts him in a position to know a vast amount of strange dealings around here, and all the way to the other side of the earth. If that, too, doesn't put a kink in your hose. If I thought you were looking for a blowhard with a trigger finger, that's as quick as it is itchy. I'd say to ask him about his brother, but it seemed to me like you were looking for a man of brains and connections. I apologize for my fucking mistake. But Kurt manages to give me a verbal beating, while also providing me with almost all the information I need. Point taken, Kurt. Where would I go about finding this guy? I don't apologize, and Kurt doesn't seem the type to require nor appreciate one. And the next morning I find myself packing enough supplies for a hard ride of a couple of days. I tighten the last strap on the saddle and check for the third time that I have Kurt's hand-drawn map safely in the front pocket of the cool grey duster that I'm wearing. I turn to face Kurt and see that he is holding something. Two things, actually. I know you ain't been impressed with the irons you've been supplied with, but I figure you being out on a mission and all, I finally do something to stop you bitching. Kurt actually smiles and he hands me 2 pistols, larger and much better machined than the 2 firearms I commonly carry. And what gives me more faith in them is what I see in the chambers. It's a far cry from modern-day ammunition, but at least what I see isn't cap and ball. The slug is strangely pointed, much larger in diameter, and doesn't look like it was made in a shed in the middle of the night. These are government issue, top of the line. If they don't stop what's coming at you, it's time to switch to a scattergun. Kurt seems proud, but whether it's pride in myself or these guns, I can't tell. Thanks. Don't worry. I'll bring them back in one piece for you. I say, testing the tension on the hammer. I started down one dusty road left out of town. A pit started to form in my stomach, and for the life of me, I feel like a kid playing sheriff who finds himself in the middle of a real crime. I spade the disgusting details of what happens when you take someone who has never ridden a horse and have them ride one, 2 days almost non-stop. And I try to remember to thank Kurt for showing me how to make sure the horse doesn't chafe. But not sparing a second to tell me the same is going to happen to me. What I will go into detail about is food on the go in the West. It might sound like a small thing, given a paranormal shitstorm I'm in the middle of, but food should be something a person can look forward to. A momentary reprieve from whatever hell they are going through. It's why the military uses space that could be spent on ammunition to ship chocolate around the world. But that is the kind of thing that comes with abundance and modern supply lines, neither of which I had access to. So, let's talk about hard track. Think of the worst cracker you've ever eaten in your life. Now make it actively hate you when you have a hard track. Can't absorb anything tougher than balsa wood, and with a flavour that is bland by itself and overpowering if you try to add anything to it. Next on the list is salt beef. Most people who have never tried it and enjoy themselves some over-salted products think that this wouldn't be too bad, maybe even enjoyable. They are wrong. Do you know what meat rust is? Well, I do, and I wish it was some kind of metaphysical disease instead of an integral part of my only source of protein. And that's it. I've had to live off MREs for 3 months, but I'll gladly spend the rest of my life cooking the 3 fingers of death over ever having to consume another piece of salt beef. My insides are in uproar. I've long since given up on trying to figure out if the fluid dripping down my leg is sweat, blood, or pus. But I finally see it, and what very well may be my salvation. The town of May Gulch. I take a moment to reflect on the fact that I have no idea what state I'm in. My gut says somewhere like Arizona, or maybe Texas, but you'd think I'd seen a sign saying of somewhere by now. If I had no idea that this town was home to an internationally famous bartender, how does that even happen at this point in history? I don't think it would have taken me long to figure out. The place is leaps ahead of the dump I've been calling my home. But its crown jewel, as you probably guess, is the massive saloon, sitting at the end of the main thoroughfare. Its deep red stained facade was made of immaculately cut timber. Hardware on the batwing door shines in the late morning sun. The patrons filter in and out, looking like folks that have found their stake and are looking to make their fortune, as opposed to the folks back home who will know nothing but the daily grind till they don't have any more days to grind. I'm given a few looks as I enter, not the least of which is by the man behind the counter. While the man was in his late 30s, losing a battle with baldness on top of his skull, but the rest of his hair kept a deep black colour. His moustache, a facial bulwark, seeming to take up a good quarter of the man's features, and was meticulously trimmed. His eyes tell me that this is a man who is quick on the uptake, and I notice the subtle nod he gives 3 men who most would assume are simply barflies. And they don't make a show of it, but each has a firearm trained on me behind their jackets. The inside is cleaner than anything I've seen since crash landing in the past, and the bar behind the man is stocked with what had to be hundreds of different bottles, a feat in the 21st century, let alone where I am. I pull a note from my pocket, making a show of not going for a weapon, as I calmly walk up to the bar and notice a few bottles of interesting ingredients for a bar to have. Nothing that would immediately raise suspicion, but I make a mental note. Howdy, I say, trying to phrase out. I hate it. Kurt sent me. Says you are a guy who could direct me to some unique individuals. I pass him the note and he studies it, seeming to trust in its authenticity. He nods again to his men, with 3 weapons suddenly relax. Kurt sent me a telegram, gave me a little information on yourself as well. Before you start feeling sore, I wouldn't have said what I need to say over wires. Kurt sent you here true, but he also wanted to make sure I knew who I'm dealing with. I'm going to say it right away. I think you're crazy. Not that I don't think there are a few things out there that aren't in the Farmer's Almanac or the Bible. But I think going around kicking those kind of hornet's nests, it doesn't indicate a man is out his chambers loaded. But who am I to stop you from doing it? James shakes his head and motions me to a well-crafted and reinforced door set flush into the wall behind the bar. His office is clean, well furnished, and smells only faintly of machine oil from a large oak table covered in small objects James has been tinkering with. I guess that they are mock-ups of bar-related tools, but they look like they have more engineering behind them than half the firearms I've seen. My ass gets a standing ovation as I sit down on a chair with actual cushions. I'd make a point about how it's the little things that you miss, but considering I'm legitimately fearful to see the state of my hindquarters, well, his condition isn't really a small issue. Well, I'm going to ask you a blunt question. I'm sorry if it seems crazy or rude, but time is a major issue here. Have you heard stories or have you seen shit? I don't care what you've been telling Kurt, but I need to know. How close have you gotten to things that belong in Fireside Tales? I ask. Cooksy, everything okay in there? I hear a mellow female voice say from somewhere outside the door. Just fine, love. James replies. That's the wife. Only one I let call me that. Don't worry about me being a huckster. I've hunted every corner of every continent to find ingredients for my drinks. You don't do that without running into a few things that you can't explain. I've sat down with things that could talk. I've learned what to carry on my person to deal with those that can't. I'm not my brothers. I don't wander around looking for a fight and then acting like I'm a hero for getting into one. I am the best bartender in the world, and to get there, I've had to adapt. I don't have a story for you. I got a location. Now, there's a gulch, about 10 minutes outside of town. The folks there, I'll bet my bottom dollar, stopped walking through the Lord's path a long time ago. Now, I've never been myself, but I've seen them patrolling the land, and I've had a chance to buy some of their shine. The stuff's mighty potent. And I can state for a fact there's two plants you don't get unless you are real comfortable with the demonic. I don't know how they're going to react, but what I can tell you is the smallest of them stand 7 feet, and the worst of them don't even look like men. You ever fought someone that big, Tex? I'm convinced James knows what he's talking about. He lets me know just enough to know he's serious, but he's keeping a whole head of a lot back. A strategy I understand in depth. You know what I say, Jim? It isn't the size of the dog in. I begin to vomit uncontrollably. I realized what I was doing about 3 words in, but didn't stop myself in time. I've talked about how the fabric of time, despite our hubris, adapts just fine to things going back and forth. And while it was thought impossible for people, various entities to have been known to pull it off. What doesn't deal well with paradoxes is the human mind. I figured this out my second night. In a genius move, I decided to try and earn a meal and a drink. I picked up a guitar and intended to plagiarize half a dozen country songs I knew for profit. But none of those people knew how achy or breaky my heart may have been. At about 5 words in, just like this, my mind started to focus on the impossibility of me being the first person to sing the song. I had jittered and stuttered, and within seconds, I was vomiting bright pink liquid onto the floor. I'll be angry with you, but by the looks of it, that is a liquid I've never seen before. James says, chuckling and shaking his head. A bartender that's never seen puke seems a little far-fetched. I deflect, thinking of a different direction to take the conversation in. A cloud passes over James's face. His look tells me, in no uncertain terms, that I am on thin ice. Andy, the man's got to have a few secrets, but let's dispense with the beating around the bush. You want to do business with me? You don't have to tell me everything, but next time you lie, or try to walk away from a topic that could have dire consequences for me and mine, we are fucking done, Andy. I can understand that we are both men of the world, and a little bit further, but if you keep treating me like I'm some 2-bit, rot-gut-slinging shyster, of which you have to covet your secrets, I'll treat you like the half-crazy, half-stupid mule-fucker you seem, and send you out of my place the hard way. Giving Kurt a good stripping down in the bargain. I'm looking you in the eye, and I'm saying that puddle on the floor isn't natural. I won't press the subject further, except to say you can think of it as my fee. We understand each other, Tex. James says this in a way that is beyond me to describe, other than to say it is quite apparent he came from a family known centuries later for their grit and capacity for violence. I understood. No offense intended. My story is long and stupid, full of paranormal shit, and that in the end wasn't even a wrapping paper on the shit-filled gift the universe has in store for me. For what it's worth, that puddle has something to do with time travel, or reality travel, maybe both, and you are welcome to it. I apologize, realizing my natural state of mind has become cynical and cloistered. Surviving the West. Part 3. 2 of 2. Let's get straight into that. Nightfall came and I was walking down a hard-packed dirt path to the gulch. Now common sense would dictate that when you are walking into a crack in the earth filled with things God threw under his bed and forgot, it's a better idea to do this during the day. Not the case. With the exception of things that have a natural aversion to daylight, you want to do any scouting or wet work at night. Sure, they may have better eyes, but they still work worse in the dark. And scent, hearing, or any other senses that they possess work just as well in the daytime. With this thought in mind, I stopped for a moment at the entrance to the gulch. Something strange is definitely making this place their home. All along the narrow, high-walled path leading to the crevasse in the rock, the sides are piled high with dead plants, straw, and bits of refuse. As I try to remain silent, I feel like the walls could come tumbling down at any moment. No tracks though, which is a good sign. Nothing has made its way out of this place in a good while. I'm not jumpy, so much as careful, hiding among the brittle garbage at every noise, knife ready, low and eager in case of any ambush. This is a scouting mission, a friendly chat if I am lucky, but I am going in prepared for the worst case scenario. I crawl the last few dozen feet till the claustrophobic path widens. A smile spreads on my face, and to any onlooker, I'm sure I look crazy as hell. This place is lived in. Ramshackle structures, houses I'm guessing, surround a large central building. The planks are rotted and black. Tin cans and bits of long since dulled metal adorn the homes. Pale light, almost imperceptible, could be seen through the finger-wide gaps in the woodwork. I have no idea what is nesting here, but I do know it's smart enough to make a home, a very good sign for my plans of diplomacy. I see a hole in a large building and make my way without a sound, creeping along the edges of the gulch. And the stench is overwhelming, a feral reek that reminds me of a cheap zoo. I swear the entire barn-like structure is illuminated by half a dozen tea candles, 3 of whom came to work drunk. The building is largely empty, as far as I can see, but there is a single stable. The stall door is much too high. I draw my eyes up through the rough-cut wood. I'm about 12 feet up when something puts a long, equine head over. And I see too many eyes, a white mane, and then nothing. I feel the flight before I realize I'm in the middle of it, and I slam to the ground, knocked to my already damaged ass. At first I think I've been blinded, but as my eyes adjust to a slightly deeper level of gloom, I see the black mass in front of me I mistook for a long darkness of missing your eyes. It's something else entirely. Something I recognize. Oh, it's at least 8 feet, likely closer to 10, as it stands hunched, feral. And in the dim moonlight, I see the massive bone-white rack of antlers, the elongated equine skull, so much like what I saw in the barn. I see the wall of furred muscle that is the creature's lanky, disproportionate body. The massive claws bear down on me as I roll out of the way. How in the hell have I run across these things twice now? Fucking Wendigo! I shout, getting to my feet. A crash course on these bastards, smart enough to know what you are saying, evil enough not to care, and shrug off anything that doesn't have some serious mojo behind it. And I bolt. I have nothing that can put a dent in the thing, let alone its family, that are no doubt crawling out of whatever fuck den that they are nesting in. A phlegmatic howl from behind me lets me know I'm right. I don't bother looking back, I just run towards the path. An entire wall of one of the jury-rigged huts breaks open. Another similar beast lumbed forward, through the wreckage. Smaller, maybe 7 feet or so, but still twice my size, and armed with a massive, crude bone axe. Wendigo that used weapons. Oh, even fucking better. I mumbled to myself, a habit I find myself falling into more and more lately. And the pot-bellied Goliath throws the weapon my way. It misses me by a country mile, but already the situation is throwing a curveball my way. What else should I have expected? And I see more, crawling out of the windows, perching on roofs. Twisted spears hit the dirt beside me. I don't have the luxury of keeping track of the freak parade appearing all around me. And I'm about 30 feet away from the entrance to the path. At least somewhere I can bottleneck this swarm, and as I spare a glance back, swarm it is. At least 24 of these things in a rabid, loping pack. I don't notice the 4th thing ready to pounce, a runt or a child. It springs at me like a landmine. I'm lucky. I spin, throwing a thing into a solid rock wall, and gaining only 4 long gashes for the effort. I'm almost to the path and its relative safety when I see something above me. Bright orange lights, some small, some large, and at first I think it's some kind of magic. But the lights begin to rapidly arc down, the larger ones bursting into dripping flame, the smaller ones clattering among the detritus, and lighting thin trails. In an instant, the path is a conflagration so massive I can feel the wind as it draws in oxygen. That shit wasn't the offal or the prehistoric caliber society. It was a trap to make sure that anything that got in wouldn't get out. In a now harshly lit gulch, I see the wave of Wendigo stalking towards me, the strongest separating from the pack and looking to take some kind of glory from the kill for themselves. And I draw my knife, laughing and shaking my head. My plan? No idea. Put the steel between my body and the first one to make it to me, make or break for it, try and somehow get past the rest, who as I see now are wielding primitive weapons, many of which are bows of some form. In other words, die on my feet. The leader, or at least the best one in the fight, stands a few feet away from me. His gait is lopsided. His breathing seems a bit laboured, but that does nothing to still my nerves. I couldn't begin to guess its weight. Even in the light of a 20-foot inferno, he appeared as a wall of flesh and rotting battle trophies. His claws glint in the light of the fire, steel talons that I'd never heard of on a Wendigo before. And I'm crouched, ready, and I see the swipe start, a horizontal slash that will bisect me, even if it doesn't take my head from my shoulders. I bring the blade up, aiming for the claws, to give myself a split second to duck under, and probably get torn apart by arrows. But my blade doesn't meet the unyielding hand of something that could crush a bowie knife like a beer can. There is a lot of strength behind the blow, but when my blade hits, it bites, shearing one of the metal-capped claws off and throwing the Wendigo's arm out wide. It's instinct that has me throwing the second blow, one that would have gotten me killed had this not been my first lucky moment since I wound up among the horse shit and horror. The second cut takes the hand from the Wendigo's arm, where it screams. Not some feral hell bleat, but a raspy scream of a very human individual that likely didn't have long to live, despite what was to happen next. I looked at the hand and I see the poorly sewn fur glove. I looked at the thing I cut and see the tattered arm of a goddamn costume. Quislings, Arnolds, Edwards, bootlegs, and there are dozens of names for them. Those people who become so afraid of what goes bump in the night, they pretend to be it. Rotten to the core, and driven by fear and rage, they are more common than you think. I'm not dealing with anything more than severely inbred, hillbilly dickheads wearing costumes. I throw the knife, and it goes through the dry horse mask, planting itself in the brain beneath. and the man drops like a stone. But not before I deftly yank the blade free and begin wiping it off on my duster. I'm breathing heavy, all of the fuckovers from the M to my aching asshole, boiling up to the surface. These idiots are standing in shock, like they believe their own bullshit, and I sheathe the knife and address the crowd. Put down the weapons and bring me out anything spooky you own. Running is for monsters you assholes don't even deserve. A mosey. The alternative. They cut me short with a rock exploding against the wall behind me. I've seen a few other versions of myself, a couple that strayed closer to Ed Gein than Audie Murphy. Nothing I'm proud of. I've always been a helping people kind of guy. Well, not these people though. I don't know if I'm smiling or shooting first, but it's a close race. The satisfying crack of the military-grade pistol warms my heart. Not as much as the 6-foot idiot on 2-foot stilts. The conical slug hits through, the left side of his chest suddenly having a hole large enough to see firelight through. 3 more gunshots and 3 more blight on the west fall, missing baseball size. Pieces. The archers find their wits and arrows fall around me like rain. I bolt for cover, putting my back to the wall of a half-collapsing hut. Weighty thumps sound from the wall behind me, and I start to judge where the missiles are coming from. It's not hard to do when there's only one building that gives a vantage point beyond eye level. I pop out from behind the wall firing. I'm not aiming for any individual, just the area where a half a dozen of the scrawniest of the clan kneel, firing at where they hope I'll be. 12 shots drop the group and chew up the roof planks around them, sending their bodies slamming into the floor below. Even with the finicky, pointed bullets, I'm reloaded in time to see the handful of psychopaths just feet from me. The chambers of the pistols are hot. I smell a slight ozone reek as I unload the guns again, this time point blank. I'm sure you've heard of shoot to kill, shoot to maim, shoot to wound. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty sure this gunfight invented a 4th type. Shoot to terrify. I fire the guns like a featherweight boxer, all awkward angles and impossible momentum shifts, and in seconds I'm rolling the last that the latest brave group offered me. His last-ditch attempt at a bear hug getting him a bullet through the bottom of his jaw. I'm soaked in gore. All but the one of the group lay dying slow on the dirt, their compatriot having an empty skull. But I noticed some of the larger, or maybe smarter individuals congregating and stripping themselves of impractical costume and arming themselves and coordinating an attack. And nearly naked, they still showed confidence. And while not the creatures of myth they were pretending to be, these were still some massive men. Their bodies deformed, swollen, their eyes mismatched or glazed over. And they split into 2 groups of 4, trying to flank me. That ozone smell was getting stronger, and I'm chewing through these morons. But the gun barrels are too hot to touch. Not that I don't take the future blisters to load a fresh 6 bullets in each gun. Spears come at me from my left and right, aimed well and thrown with intent. One clips my boot, and I start to take this group seriously, especially with who knows how many of their friends behind them. I'm ready to pounce once I am wounded. I raise my right arm, picking one barrel-shaped man and with a long greasy horseshoe of hair, and I pull the trigger. The shell doesn't fire besides a sad snapping noise. My second trigger presses fast, but not as fast as the explosion originating from the pistol itself. I feel shrapnel scrape my face. I see the tip of my pinky sail into the night, along with chunks of splintered wood and red-hot metal. The hand is bad, but other than the obvious, in one piece. I'm flexing it, even as I bring my second gun into play. The first shot fires a red-hot slug that has a short looping flight into the dirt in front of one of my attackers. I managed to drop it slightly before the overheated, overstressed internals of the firearm cook off the remaining bullets. The gun is a mangled, useless lump, but at least my left hand came through better than my right. My knife is out in my left hand in a flash. I'm backing away from the group of drooling, raving psychopaths who were forming a semicircle around me. This situation has suddenly turned in a dramatic way. I'm backing towards the path, trying to ignore the pain in my mangled hand, and ready to bolt once I have a straight run. I'm more than willing to trust my leather coat against the flames than me, badly wounded in a knife fight against 8 giants with spears and short brutal-looking bone daggers. I can feel the heat at my back as I parry a thrust slower than I anticipated. Bloodless, I'm guessing. The bitch a shrapnel is, it doesn't have to turn part of you to pulp to kill you. If one of those stray pieces of steel or brass tore through the wrong artery, all the badass gutter fighting in the world doesn't mean shit. I'm about to bolt, knowing the men, naked as they are, can't possibly be stupid enough to follow me. I take a deep breath, but before I turn, I hear a noise. Slow at first, but gaining in speed. I think rain for a moment, and then I see 2 of the inbred killers in front of me, torn apart. I see rapid flashes from the top of one of their homes. Fuck you, Thomas Gatlin. The gun of the same name keeps firing, gaining speed, now faced with a wall of lead behind them and a wall of fire in front of them. The naked murderers are hot on my tail as I put a bandana over my face and charge into the flames. My skin burns, but the worst part of it is kept at bay by the duster and leather gloves I donned. Every step I feel a hand on my shoulder, trying to yank me backwards, and I lash out with my blade. I see nothing but shadows, but as I start to become lightheaded from the smoke inhalation, my attacker's nude form succumb to the flames. I'm slow to a walk, my sense of direction meaningless in the inferno. My only guide, the scorching heat, still coming from the walls. I'm on the ground before I realize I stumble. Blood loss, smoke inhalation, a blunt trauma, it all catches up to me, and I struggle to stay awake. But as I see the flames around me dull, I know the next person who sees me will be looking at a charred corpse in the boxer's pose. The overpressure of air rushing into the space flames were only seconds before jolts me awake with sharp bursts of pain in my ears. I see I'm about 10 feet away from the exit to the path, and James, with a grin totally at odds with the situation, shakes a flask and offers it to me as I struggle to limp over to him. I try to tell him of the army behind me, the Gatling gun covering the entrance, but my voice is a smoke-ruined croak. It's all fine, Tex. We figured something went real bad once we saw the flames. Drain that flask. Won't bring back that fingertip, but it'll get you on a path to healing. He shakes the flask, and I take it, assuming he is talking metaphorically. I need to stop making assumptions. I can feel the itchy burn of the worst of my wounds closing, my throat no longer feeling like I've been using it to store broken glass. Who is we? I say, steering glances back towards the path. The missus and I, James says, calmly looking down the high-walled path. There's an army back there. Gatling gun. We need to get out of here and come back with a posse, James. And I'm guessing that your wife is some kind of desert witch or alchemist. And I appreciate the say, but we need force here. We are outnumbered and outgunned. I say, not knowing shit about shit. Sexism is bad, kids. Remember that. The fire? That was me. Though to call me an alchemist would be a bit of an insult, Tex. James says, patting me on the back. No, the old ball and chain is the muscle of my operation. And out of the shadows slivers Mrs. James Earp. She is 10 feet tall, but that isn't taking into account the 10 feet of chitinous lizard tail trailing behind her. No legs, just that massive tail that I assure you could tear through a bunker door. The upper torso is a twisted fusion of human and lizard, not enough of either to make any part of her easy on the eyes. Where you expected scale, there was fingernail-like layers. Where one should want flesh, bone-colored ridges rose like melted wax. A land siren. Now, this raises two things. my hope in a current situation, and serious questions about James. If you can get us to the barn in the middle of that town, I think there is something there worthwhile. I say, knowing the answer, but asking anyway. Bands of flesh cover her mouth at random. They stretch back, revealing a set of mismatched fangs as she laughs, long yet human-like tongue flickering out of her mouth with mirth. I told Cooksy these weren't anything close to my kind. We should have gave them a boot long ago. But that's Cooksy for you, soft-hearted and cautious. That gun of theirs looked like it was made by anyone important? She says, her confidence practically oozing. I shake my head, knowing what she means. To call what ensued next a battle would be about as wrong as it could be. Even slaughter implies some kind of order to it. But this lady, she blew through that shanty town with a force that would make a storm jealous. Body parts flew, screams get twisted out of the mutated for longer than I think possible. And the lady, she takes every type of bullet, bludgeon, and shit-smeared shank that they have to offer. Most not even scratching her hide, and the ones that do causing a minor wound that seals within seconds. James and I strolled towards the barn-like structure, the residents of the gulch able to focus on nothing but the 20-foot creature wiping their lineage from the earth. But it wasn't them that caught my eye. The barn door creaks open, and wooden pegs squeaking worse than the last of the lady's victims. I could be wrong. It could just be one of this brood that was a little too big and wild to be let roaming around. But the smell, the petting zoo meets butcher reek, tells me I'm right. Behind the stable doors I hear clicking, and I see the remnants of fingers, hands, and other less recognizable parts of the human body litter the floor. I open the doors, slowly, try not to spook what's inside. I was chained to the floor, barely able to move, and twice the size of a Clydesdale, crammed into a strange little altar/cage that wouldn't be comfortable for a donkey. And these fuckers were worshipping it in some sick way. It was a prisoner and a god for a tribe of twisted rednecks. When up close, its face is more that of an elongated spider. 8 black orbs studded in 2 rows of 4. Its 6 legs are black and white striped and attached to a massive equine frame, ending in a set of spinnerets. It must have been standing at full height when I saw it. It looked to me, not with the rage of some bloodthirsty guard dog, but with a kind of pleading. Once your wife gets done out there, do me a favor. See if she is willing to help me tame a cult. I say, perfectly happy to have traded the end of my pinky for something we use to postpone reality travel, to avoid groups of... but that's a tale for next time. Assuming I have a next time, that is. Wow, 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 wow. Another one. Wow. What a delightful treat that was. But I hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as I. Of course, a humongous thank you to the author, HughEhHoule, over on Reddit No Sleep. I hope I pronounced that right, Hugh. And once again, a big thank you for allowing me to work with you in your incredible story. Well, guys and girls as ever, you know the drill. Please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. If you're an aspiring writer or would just like to have a crack at things like myself, then please do get in touch with me at the brand new contact email, which is as on screen. Contact the dead one at gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope you guys and girls are enjoying this 40k special celebration shows as much as I have putting them together. And of course, once again, a huge thank you for all your support, your kind comments, and your likes and shares. It really does still mean the world to me all these years later, and I truly am excited to see what happens next over the coming months. As ever guys, I hope you're all well and happy. You're staying fit and focused. But above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.